Gaywyck by Vincent Verga. Publisher Allison Books, Los Angeles, New York. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 19. It angered me that our love had not yet reached the healing stages. Its magic powers needed prodding, and among the doubts that occasionally tweaked my euphoria with an old new one, what am I doing wrong? I was impatient for my rewards. I wanted my happily ever after now. True, he needed a great deal of concerted effort, but my impatience gave rise to a new doubt. Could love survive life? I reread Wuthering Heights. This was not the time for temperament or flaring nostrils. Death was not an attractive alternative. Dum spiro sparo became my motto, and with every breath I hoped. There were the glorious summer months ahead. Maybe he would retire and we could spend our lives living, loving. Since I never had a share in the working world, relinquishing it was no problem, and it was easier still for me to give up Danough's share. Nothing could be easier than giving away what belongs to someone else. I probed for his truth, and became more determined to find it for him, thinking it lost, not merely unrecognized. My dreams returned to terrorize me. The apparition taunted me, and were it not for Kale's talons, would have physically harmed me. I was too dazed the next mornings to remember clearly. Gifts of seashells and wildflowers decorated my bed table. The paintings of the twins returned to my wall after mysteriously journeying back to Danough's for his visit. I attempted to fetter my fears. I resolved to write Danough and mention these unnerving games. A restlessness seized me. I could not read. I could not catalog. I could neither write letters nor rant in my journal. Keyes locked himself into his rooms, which ended my piano lessons. I dared not play the instrument for fear of seeming disrespectful to the memory of Jones, too soon departed, and for fear one of the old men would slam the cover on my knuckles. So I exercised for hours in my gymnasium. I worked with the gardeners. I swam with Brian. I tossed a football with Brian. He and I played like table tennis, the latest gift from Danough, or took photographs, or made bonsai. He tried to teach me to cook, but I lacked the patience for all that chopping and waiting. I had always found chemistry tedious. My only accomplishment was a growth of 1 3/4 inches. The fourth morning after Danough's departure, Danvers appeared at breakfast. He looked well, I said placatingly. He raised an eyebrow and noted it was time I learned to observe rather than to judge. There was nothing I could say to that. The truth stung, and I remained silent. "We'll resume Dio Cassius after lunch," he commanded. "Mm-hmm. And cease those annoying grunts." "Mm-hmm. Sorry, I mean..." "Eat your eggs." "Yes, sir." He sighed and rested his head in his hands. Lowering his arms, he looked steadily at me, then smiled gently, eyebrows level. "Have you grown taller, or are you sitting straighter?" "Taller." "You grow larger, and I grow smaller. I believe everything is a decision of the mind, but there are some things written in the constellations called chromosomes." "Yes, exactly." He laughed, handed me a book of poems, the actual peace offering, I assumed. Themyris, one of the first to write of love between comrades. The world's disapprobation is easily won. "Robbie, another type of growth will soon take care of it. Do eat your eggs." "That explains it," I thought, hopping to conclusions. "He's worked everything out with Danough." Thank God. The discipline imposed by Danvers that afternoon made the resumption of my other duties easier. His irritation inspired me, though his occasional flashes of black impatience, stinging jibes at my youthful rheumatism, reduced my brain to the dark and soggy place he labeled it. 2 days later, while we sat over our books, Ambrose interrupted with the news that 2 gigantic packages had arrived. Danough sent Brian and me disowned tricycles. The lightweight, air-cooled, single-cylinder affairs soon replaced Anita as my mode of transportation, but Since they made so much noise, we agreed to keep them at the gatehouse, far away from Denver's, using the road outside the estate walls for our races, after raising red warning flags to inform the villagers and their nervous horses that we were operating our machines. Danough wrote up plans to build a garage near the gatehouse and sent a packet of brochures advertising the latest automobiles for me to examine. We decided on a Morris Petite Duke for the two of us and a British Daimler for crowds. He also announced plans to bring electricity to Gaywyck, overriding Denver's long-standing objection. If we are to live there, he wrote, we will live comfortably and, well, full members of the 20th century's family of man. My interest in the cottage revived. Getting a key from Denver's, I began to catalog the books there. My work in Library 1 was completed. I was not comfortable in Library 2. The silence in Keyes' apartment was positively ominous. Frequently, when working with my back to the door, I glanced over my shoulder to reassure myself he wasn't approaching, armed with a harpoon. That morning on the beach, when Jones lay dead between us, he had paused in his keening to fire at me a glance of hatred, sharp as shrapnel. I was afraid of him. Denver's, is Keyes all right? No. He'll get over it. Are you sure? No. Shouldn't Danough be notified? Whatever for? What can he do about it? The old fool's quite mad. His grief has eclipsed his reason. If we need Danough in a hurry, Brian will telegraph for him. It's why he was taught to use the thing. Brian never mentioned. Did you ever ask? No. Your sixth sense asleep. How did you think he sent for Danough last time? Oh, where were we? Daily after my reading with Denver's, I stopped in the kitchen for crust, then walked directly to the pond, forbidding myself a detour to the waterfall, that environ now claustrophobic, with secret harmonies. I worked until tea time. Denver's and I resumed Roman history. One afternoon, finished at the cottage, I discovered it was raining. The warm day, overcast and misty, with the sun a diffuse white brightness amid the gray, could have held until evening. Long Island weather was never reliable, but I was beyond lamenting its dampness and perversity. Without hesitation, I decided to use the connecting tunnel. I had no attractive alternative. Getting wet was not amusing, and waiting out the downpour would cause me to miss tea. Besides, I reasoned, what the hell is a tunnel for? With the help of a borrowed lamp, I made my way without incident until I reached the nail-studded door at the far end under the manor. There, against the wall on the near side, I found a suitcase. It was a beautiful bag of soft brown leather with the initials CG engraved on its gleaming gold clasp. Without a qualm, I opened it, or tried to. It seemed locked, but with a concerted effort, I managed to press the bulging sides together and free the jammed clasp. It fell open, immediately revealing the identity of the packer. Jones had thrust Danough's diaries in last, at the penultimate moment, which had not been the case with my 2 cashmere sweaters, or the caftan Danough had given me. When I removed everything else, I discovered them on the bottom. A side pocket held a gold brush and a medieval French silver ladle for heavy cream. Another pocket was crammed with Danough's precious stones. I fondled the purple amethyst, the color of Denver's grief. A third housed an indiscriminate clutch of Greek and Etruscan coins, and ironically, one Hadrianic coin bearing a likeness of Antonius. Wrapped separately in a mauve silk scarf was a small signed drawing of the crucified Christ by Da Vinci. One of the most valuable pieces in the entire Gaylord collection. At least you paid attention to what people told you, Jones. I went through everything carefully. A photographer's large gray envelope, similar to the one he had given me, but packed to bursting. I put aside. On top of it, I placed the 3 diaries. I returned my own clothing first, and a pair of filthy undershorts from which I removed the ivory and jade cameo he'd pinned to the crotch. I rifled through the other articles of clothing piece by piece, discovering a jeweled Medici dagger and a pair of socks, and a black lacquered box from Helen, Japan, which contained Danough's diamond studs, but no wristwatch. I arranged the valuables neatly and delicately, handling the diaries and the photographs, not wishing to damage them, and closed the bag. I carted it back to the cottage, choosing the second-floor room overlooking the Wych Elm. I stashed it in an empty closet. Outside, it was still raining. I was chilled. I retrieved the case and opened it for a sweater. This time I kept the envelope and the diaries aside. Crossing to the windows, I sat in the dull, murky light and extinguished the lamp. I opened the envelope first. There were 17 prints inside, all in superb condition, but for one. Each had been carefully notated with subjects, dates, times, and places, except for one. The two exceptions were not the same photograph. The first, a damaged print, was folded down the center, the face of Stephen, who sat entwined with a very supple Mr. Gaylord, had been neatly excised. With a shudder, I thought of the Rossetti portrait. The second exception, annotated, was of me and Danough Gaylord. It had been taken in my room, my bedroom. The Crivelli on the wall above us attested to that, as it gazed upon our rioting forms. How could it be? I was stunned. I looked through the other photographs. There was one of the twins. 1683, 2 p.m., library. And another CG and keys, 583, 11 a.m., K bedroom. There was 4 more of the twins together, posed, one of Mortimer at the waterfall, sunlit, flaunting his gifts. 18481, 2 of Denver's and Cormac, 11/11/82, 4 p.m. A D bedroom, 5 of Mr. Gaylord, unidentified, and Stephen, all blurred by their carnal activity, all focused on the rampant, priapic nature of the two of them, and one of Mr. Gaylord and Cormac. 3884, 9 a.m. Study? I put them aside, never having seen their lascivious like before. I experienced a profound, dizzying concupiscence that annihilated me. I had to stretch myself out flat on the wooden parquet floor and think of other things. After several deep breaths, the blood returned to my head. I stood and walked around the room. I'm a very visual person. Those images seared into my brain, and like the learned notes of a Chopin ballade, they automatically flexed the appropriate muscles. I felt ill with a dry, nerve-scraping tension. I wanted to look again. I wanted them gone forever. The turmoil that engendered was catastrophic. I started to cry. A part of me, the innocent part of me, believed what Danough and I did together was unique. I did not understand sexuality, my own or anyone else's. If people loved one another, why was some of their love acceptable and some not? Why was I crying? Suddenly, inexplicably angry, I snatched the top diary, undoing the tie. I opened it. A sheaf of lavender papers fluttered around me. Dropping to the floor, I sat in their midst. The scented, folded pages were covered with Keith's majestic, florid hand. They were love notes to Jones, of billets due, lewd verse, and several sonnets. I read a final couplet. Be not self-willed, for you are much too fair to be death's conquest, and make worms your hair. Now, apropos, I muttered nastily, if a trifle derivative, the extent of the passion expressed in the notes was shocking. He had loved the boy, undoubtedly, still loved the dead boy with every atom of his being, beyond all reason, to the grossest excess. I read every line, enthralled and horrified. The last was a short note. You cannot leave. I forbid it. Before I lose you, I will kill you. You know the strength in my hands. Do not play with me. You are my life. An immense scrolled K, like a crumpled spider, filled the lower half of the page. It was as I expected. The boy had been murdered. After leaving me, he went to Keyes, who lured him to the sea and murdered him, strangled him, or snapped his neck in a crazed frenzy of despair. I knew all along that Danough had nothing to do with it. Like summer heat lighting on the horizon, the photographs flashed at the edge of my mind, distracting, disturbing. I put aside the loose papers and opened the diary. C is obsessed with Papa. He has to know everything. He spies on him through a hole in the drapes and through the mirror. We still take turns being Papa. I can't watch them. It excites me too much. C says there is no such thing. There are too many things C does not understand. For him, sex is all. For Papa, too. I want much more. I flip to the last entry. C is dead. I must die too. How can I live without Papa and C? I open it to the center. C is now with Papa and S often. I heard Papa tell D it was to make C manageable. I closed the book, tied the leather thongs, and put everything with the suitcase. The irregular tapping of the rain on the leaves told me the downpour had abated. I carried the suitcase to the closet and hurried out into the dusk. I had missed tea, but I wasn't hungry. I felt weighed down just by sorrow. Not even the sight of the swans with their cygnets cheered me. The photographic images came to life in my head. A series of sighs, moans, and animal gruntings. But no joy, no laughter. Behind the lies and secrets of Gaywyck, there lurked only shadows, groping and grasped. All was grief, all was sorrow. Their sorrow, I repeated aloud. Why is their sorrow suffocating me? No sadness? He has asked by the waterfall. No! I wanted to shout to the heavens, I have no sorrow with my sexuality, and I don't want anyone else's. The male swan rose from the water, shaking his body and spreading his wings. I laughed, understanding the act, and needed to do the same. I felt fiercely alive and buoyantly free. I ran across the pond, intending to swim in the cove, a place I had assiduously avoided since Joan surfaced there. But the rains had soaked the mud flats, converting the arid acre into soft, welcoming, primal ooze. Stripping off my clothes, I slid and flopped and rolled in the satiny, smooth, warmly enveloping earth. Shouting with happiness, I fell into the surf, loving myself and my life, and wanting nothing to be different ever. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.